Hey folks, in this video we are going to be discussing how to automate the delivery of an email using Google Apps Script within Google Sheets, and we're going to be using the onChange trigger. So what that means is we're going to have a workbook that is going to deliver an email every time that a change is made to the spreadsheet. So the structure of this is going to be a little bit different. I've composed a Python script that adds a new line to a workbook with the time and date. So this doesn't really matter, but this is how we're simulating the movement of information from one place to another. The result of that Python script adds, or it appends a new line to a spreadsheet. So it will say, hello, today is date and the time is time. So once a new line is added or appended to the sheet, this script runs, which is using three files. One is our main file, which extracts the data from the sheet. We're going to use a custom function called getSheetById. And then we are going to use HTML, an HTML file, to write our email so that it's formatted and we have a header and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to run this script. So I'm going to run all these cells, and it will result in a new line being added to the sheet that you just saw. And then this script is processing it, and we will check on that by going to my apologies there, to the executions. And we can see that one was completed. So that's exactly what we wanted. And we go to my email, which has no new mail. And then we refresh, and now we have this feedback from your YouTube channel. Hello, I have blah, blah, blah. Is this work? And then you can see down here, we have the date and time that is coming from the sheet. So as you can see, we're not going to be focusing on sending beautiful emails. We're merely thinking about the technical aspects of automating new activity in our file. So I am going to close that stuff down now, and we are going to delete the email, and we are going to begin with a blank copy of the file that we were just working in. So we are going to go over to Google Apps Script. I already have it open. In the event that you don't have it open, create a spreadsheet, go to the extensions menu, and then select App Script. And then that will populate this IDE file where you will have boilerplate my function already written. You can see I'm starting from scratch, so we're going to begin by writing out the word function, and we are going to be developing our main function, and we're going to open up our curly brackets, and yeah, we're going to get going. And actually, I apologize. Before we start with our main function, we are going to add a script file, and we are going to develop our custom getSheetById file. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that this is my preferred method for extracting information from Google Sheets. So I'm going to begin by writing function and saying getSheetById. And then this is going to have one argument, which is going to be the sheet ID. So that's what we're going to pass to our custom function. So we're going to begin by accessing the workbook. And we are going to do that by declaring a workbook variable. That's why I'm using WB. I'm going to type spreadsheet app.getActiveSpreadsheet, and we're just going to have an empty parentheses in there. Next thing we're going to do is access all the sheets in the workbook, and we are going to create a sheets variable, and we are going to say wb.getSheets, and that will collect every sheet in the workbook. Now we're going to loop through all the sheets. So we are going to use a for loop, and we're going to use I as our variable, which I am using to stand for iterator. And I'm going to say for I in sheets. And the reason that we're doing that is because we want to loop through all the sheets and we want to see which sheet has the ID that we are passing to our function. So we are going to look through all the sheets. So we are going to do if sheets iterator dot get sheet ID, open parentheses, double equal sign, sheet ID. So this is the variable that we are passing to the function. So anytime that we use this function, we are going to pass to it a number which should come from a spreadsheet. So in the event that one of the sheets has the sheet ID that we are looking for, then we are going to use that sheet ID to get the sheet name. And the reason that we're doing this, and we're going to create a variable that's called sheet name, and we're going to say sheets iterator dot get sheet name, pass an empty parentheses, and then we're going to leave our if statement, and then we're going to leave our for loop, and then we're going to go down here, and we are going to, sorry, one extra line there. Let me actually go back and add that comment. We're going to say return the native get sheet by name function. So the reason that we're doing this is because when you're attempting to work within the AppScript spreadsheet app library, there is no native get sheet by ID. There's a function called get sheet by name. And the problem that I've run into in the past is that when people open up spreadsheets, they change the name of the sheets. If that happens and you say, you know, wb.getSheetByName, and the sheet was originally called sheet 1 and then somebody changes it to my spreadsheet, it's not, the code that you pass to it is not going to return a result, and then it's going to error out. The identification numbers do not change. So the sheet is going to have the same number regardless of what the name of the tab is. So it's a very stable way to extract data so that you error-proof your script, especially if you're giving it to other people. Cool. So now that we have that, that custom function, we are going to go back to our main file, and we are going to begin by access the sheet with the form responses. And what we're going to do is we're going to call create a new variable, and we're going to say var form responses, and we are going to use the get sheet by ID function. So now we can go back to our spreadsheet and we can identify the sheet number up here. So you can see that each sheet has a GID, and sheet 1, fun fact, is always 0. So we're going to go back in here and we are going to pass a 0 to it. Obviously, you might have a different sheet ID than I do. Pass whatever ID has the data that you want. So now we're going to collect all the data from the responses sheet. So we are going to, let's call this var form data, and we are going to reference form responses dot get range, and we are going to start at row 1, column 1, and then we are going to go all the way to the last row. And we are going to then go form responses dot get last column, and we're going to go to the last column. So the way the get range works is you basically determine what row you want to start at, that's what this one is, what column you want to start at, that's what this one is, and then you want to say how many rows you go. So we're referencing the entire sheet, and we're saying get the last row of that sheet, and get last row will return the last row with data in it. So if you have 900 blank rows and 100 rows of data, this value here is going to return the number 100. Same thing with get last column. It returns the last column with data. So if you have 26 columns and only 3 have data in them, the number 3 is going to get returned. So after our double parentheses there, so you can see we got an end parentheses for get last column and then an end parentheses for get range. We're going to do dot get display values. Very important that you get the right one in here. Sometimes people just enter in get display value and that will only return one result. Get display values will return everything, or multiple results, I should say. Cool. So now we're going to declare another variable for recent response, and this will collect the most recent response. I say var recent response is equal to form responses dot get range, and we are going to, instead of start at 1, we are going to use form responses dot get last row. So remember how I said that get last row returns the last row of data? When we want the most recent response, we use get last row to then identify the very last row. We still want to start at column 1, and now we only want to go one row because we just want one line of data. We're going to do form responses dot get last column, double parentheses, and then we are going to do the same get display values because we want multiple values and not just one. And I just want to note, you may notice that this is referencing form data and form responses and recent responses. The reason that these variables are being used is because much of this code is coming from a video that I made about on form submission. This is basically the exact same thing. The only difference is that we're not actually using a form, but the code still applies, so I reused it. So fun fact for everybody, this is a way to be efficient with your code. You don't have to rewrite everything all the time. So now that we've done a bunch of that, why don't we do logger.log, and we are going to log recent response. So we're going to hit save project, and now we are going to run it. It's going to ask us to give permissions so that we are giving Spreadsheet app the ability to create, read, update, and delete values via AppScript. So this is totally fine. Cool. So the reason that we're doing this is because there is no values in the range, right? So when we go to the spreadsheet here, it's completely empty. So I am going to update my Python code to push a new thing in there. And 1 second, changing the workbook ID in here. I'm going to hit runtime. We're going to run them all. We're not going to go into Python today. It's not relevant to the on change trigger. But in the future, that would, something that I would be looking to teach. So let me know if you're interested in learning about Python. We're going to hit run, and now you can see we are getting our first row here. Hello, today is October 21, 2023, and the time is almost 7 p.m. Cool. So this is doing everything that we wanted. We're getting one result. And just so that you can kind of see it, I'm going to go in here and I'm actually just going to type some stuff. And when we hit run, you can see that now we're returning type some stuff. So basically, recent response is just going to collect the most recent row of information in there, regardless of where it's coming from. So now what we're going to do is create a variable that identifies the email address for delivery. So for me, I am going to create a variable for email recipient. Sorry if I spelled this wrong. Is that how you spell recipient? Doesn't matter. So we're gonna name your variable whatever you will name it. I hope I actually spelled recipient here, but I may not have. So we're gonna do my name, mattbrigidi.dev@gmail.com. And this is the email address that you can send things in the event that you want to contact me or ask me any questions or anything. Cool. So now what we have to do is create an template object for dynamically constructing HTML. Really rolls off the tongue. So what that means is we have to add an HTML file to our script, I'm just going to call this email for simplicity's sake. You can call it whatever you want to. So then we're going to get a bunch of this boilerplate code, which is great. We can leave it there. And what we're going to do now is create a variable called HTML template is equal to HTML service dot create template from file, parentheses, single quote, and then you enter in the name of your file. So in this case, it's just called email. But if you name this anything else, then that's the name that gets passed to this template file over here. Next thing we are going to do is define the HTML variable for answers. So that means that we are just going to call HTML template, and then we are going to call this answer1, and we are going to set that to recent response. And then we are going to access array index 0 and array column index 0. So 0, 0 is accessing this value in here. So this bracket means that we have an array or a list, and within that list we have another list which is appearing as type some stuff. So dealing with arrays results in 0 indexes. So when you're in a spreadsheet, you have row 1, column 1. And because when we're doing get range, we are using 1 as our first index. However, when you are dealing with arrays or lists like this, they have an index of 0. So because our array of arrays, these two brackets, only have a single value in there, it is 0 index and 0 index. That's why we're getting 2 zeros in here, because we have 1 row and we have 1 column and we have 1 result in there. So now that we have that done, we can evaluate the template and return an HTML output object. And we're going to put that in a variable, and we're going to say HTML for email is equal to HTML template dot evaluate parentheses dot get content parentheses. Wonderful. So now we are going to send the email. So we're going to use Gmail app. There's also a mail app. I typically use Gmail just because it's Google, so why not? So our first argument in here is going to be who we're sending the email to. So we're going to pass our email recipient variable. We are going to title the email, and we are going to call it feedback from your YouTube channel. And then we are going to put a little disclaimer in here. This email contains HTML. This is what will populate if the HTML doesn't. And then we're going to use curly brackets, and we are going to say HTML body colon space HTML for email. So we're referencing this variable as well as the email recipient variable. And now our main file is done. So before we can set our trigger and everything, we're going to go over to the HTML email, and now we're going to start writing some HTML. I'm not an expert in really anything, but specifically HTML. So anything that I say to you is just my understanding of it, but I'm just going to tell you the basics so that you can kind of deal with it. So we're going to begin with a p tag, which means paragraph. So this is how you enter in new lines. You can see that in HTML, anytime you have an opening tag, you have a closing tag. And the difference between an opening tag and a closing tag is this backslash over here. So within our p tags, we are going to write a little message. And we're going to say, hello, I hope this email finds you well. And then I'm a big M dash person, so I add that in there. And then we're going to open another p tag. So this is going to put it on a new line. And we're going to say enclosed. Actually, before we do enclosed, let's close off our p tag there. Cool. So we're going to say enclosed is feedback from, no, you know what? Enclosed is the current date and time. You can find the date and time below. I'll tell you, just like fascinating emails, riveting stuff. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do another p tag, close that with a p tag, and then we are going to use the equivalent of a reference. This is how JavaScript or HTML, apologies for my lack of articulation there, references variables. So in our main file, we had a connection to, we created that HTML template.answer1, and we had that answer that equal to our most recent response. So we're now going to reference that variable in our HTML file. So we're going to do a less than sign, question mark, equal sign, space. Then we're going to type answer1, or whatever you named your variable. We're going to do a question mark, and then we're going to do a greater than sign. We're going to hit save, and we are going to go back to our main file. So what we should be able to do now is run our script, and what we should get is type some stuff as the value that gets pushed to our email. So we're going to hit run, and we're going to review permissions, and we're just going to give Gmail the ability to, same thing, create, read, update, delete files from Gmail, which sounds more intimidating than it is, but this is how you can kind of like actually use this service. And you can see it complete successfully. I have a security alert just mentioning that I have allowed access to those libraries in AppScript. And now you can see that we have our email in here that says type some stuff. So the last thing that we need to do in order to automate that email is go over to our triggers and create a new trigger and go down to select event type and adjust it to be on change. Save the trigger. We got that in there. And now what we're going to do is go back to my Gmail, and I'm going to delete that. You can see I have no new mail. I'm going to go back to my Python script, which is now pointing to this send email on change file. I'm going to go to runtime. I'm going to run them all. Hopefully we don't get any errors in here. Cool. So now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to my executions. Very happy to see that we had our trigger. You can see in here it says editor. That means that somebody pushed a button. This is coming from a trigger that was completed in less than 2 seconds. I'm going to go over to my spreadsheet file. You can see after type some stuff, we now have a new appended line item. We're going to go back to Gmail. We're going to hit refresh and check it out. We now have feedback from your YouTube channel, all of the HTML in there with the dynamic information that was pushed in there. So to recap, we had a system where data was being automatically pushed into a spreadsheet. And the result of that data push had appended line items going into a spreadsheet tab. We use Google Apps Script in order to compose a 3-file project, which included our main function, our getSheetById function, and an HTML file to extract the data from the spreadsheet and then send an automated email using HTML using the onChange trigger. I hope you found this helpful. I have a couple other videos about emails on my channel. I have a couple other videos about data automation on my channel. And like I said, I'm thinking about developing a Python series. So if you're interested in that, please let me know, and I'd be happy to tailor some videos to it. I wish you the best of luck on your data journey, and hopefully you enjoyed today's video.